So welcome back to the Square. I'm your host, Curtis. Kind of going off of what we talked about last week, we do have to touch on things are changing with the show. We've got a new co-host. Introduce yourself here.
Well, my name is Curtis Hall. I am the father of the host of the show. I guess I am very grateful and happy to be here as my son invited me to the show. So I am taking his lead. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to give it back over to you.
Perfect.
Let's get this thing started.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're gonna just kind of recap the season here. So diving into that, both have top 10 list. Mine, again, in no particular order here. I didn't have a chance to kind of rank them as I wish I could have, but yours, I think you do.
I did rank mine, and they're just for the regular season.
Okay, cool. So diving in, let's just go from your number 10. What do you got?
Number 10, I have the performance by Devontae Adams in Week 7 of against the Houston Texans at home. As you can see, that Devontae Adams he had a line of 13 catches, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was, I'm sorry, so sorry. He was targeted 16 times.
Gotcha.
He had 16 targets for 13 catches. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
196 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a 15.1 yard average per carry, catch per carry during that game, and had 10 receiving first downs for the game. So that was my number 10.
Okay.
At 196 yards, it only gets better.
Yeah. No, I mean Devontae Adams had a crazy year. Gonna touch on Green Bay in a little bit when was my list here, but for me, I would say, and again in no particular order, I just have a bunch of highlights from this season. The specific play, the Hail Murray play, can't remember exactly which week that happened against Buffalo. Kyler Murray rolls out just an absolute bomb, looking like Aaron Rodgers from 2015, 2016 time, and just DeAndre Hopkins being himself and going up there and catching anything that's in a 10-foot radius of him. He goes up and grabs it and snags it and over 3-4 different defenders. So I think that was one of the biggest highlights of the year. A lot of people are talking about how Arizona is kind of a force to be reckoned with moving forward, and how they might have been a year too early. So everybody's going to be looking at how they move forward. But that specific play just kind of cemented for me specifically that Kyler Murray is going to be one of these quarterbacks in the NFC that we're going to have to watch out for moving forward, as everybody in the NFC is getting close to having a highly talented quarterback to kind of helm their franchises. So that's going to be my number 10 there. What's that?
Week 10. Happened to happen in Week 10.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that was my one of my plays of the year. And then I guess next up, I wanted to talk about Justin Herbert's season. Started out with one of the biggest highlights, in my opinion, is him almost taking down single-handedly Kansas City, where he almost upset Kansas City in his debut game. He was just phenomenal all season long, though. He wins Rookie of the Year this year. So just kind of he came in on 15-minute notice for that game, and he was ready to play. He came in, showed out, and then moving forward, he just never looked back, honestly. Like I said, he wins Rookie of the Year. He puts up insane numbers for a rookie QB, and with all of the mess that was happening in with the Chargers this season, for him to go ahead and put up the stat line that he did, he definitely deserved that Rookie of the Year award. So, your number 9, sir?
My number 9. All right. At number 9, I have Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, he's a beast this year. Loved him in fantasy.
Yes, he was excellent in fantasy, just not for my team because I had him drafted in no leagues.
Yep.
With that being said, as I digress, this is good. This is one of the strangest lists that I have because the names I'm naming off generally could be at the top of this list, but somebody has to be 10, someone has to be 9. So with that is Dalvin Cook, week 8, going against at Green Bay. So I got this Green Bay Tide thing going on. But in week 8, what he had 30 carries, 163 yards, ridiculous, and 3 touchdowns. He had 11 first down rushes,
Yep.
and the man was 2 for 63 and a touchdown in reception yards. I mean, a
Keep going.
completely
Keep
full
going.
stat. No, that's all the stats I have because that was more than enough to be 9 on the list. Now you are free to because I know this is your guy,
Yeah.
so you are free to just go ahead and add on to that line because that
I
ridiculous stat line
the
already.
stats speak for themselves. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'll just say the one thing about that is I just kind of bury you a little bit more. That was definitely the week that I single-handedly he took down your team against me in our fantasy league here. So that was I remember the discussions we had. You were pissed. Your entire team did well, but
So
you couldn't stand up against Dalvin
not a
Cook.
fantasy show. This is not a fantasy show.
It's not. It's not. I
You
wanted
made
to.
two references. I was going to say that, but
I
okay.
just needed to bring it up.
I completely understand. I completely understand.
All right, so moving on to number 8. What do you got at number 8?
Number 8, we are coming in with. Give me 1 second. My notes are messy. Okay. Y'all please bear with me and don't call in and say I'm crazy and what it is. But at number 8, I got Derrick Henry.
Hmm.
Yeah, remember these are the regular season.
I mean, I'm excited
not
to
the
look for
postseason games that everybody thinking about and that's
Yeah.
fresh in everybody's mind. I didn't want to talk about the typical ones, so I just left the postseason out completely. Just the regular season. I'm gonna be bringing up some things to make people remember some things from way back when, because we live in a microwave, popcorn society where we don't remember much of anything. We probably only remember who was in the Super Bowl 2 days ago. Really, to be honest, like we never remember who lost the game. So. I mean, Tampa Bay beat somebody.
Yeah. Well, what do you got
Generally
for Derrick
speaking,
Henry
moving
there?
on. I'm sorry, but I digress. With that being said, I got Derrick Henry in Week 13 at Jacksonville.
Okay.
26 carries, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had an 8.3 yards per carry on each of his runs. Just complete dominance over. It was Jacksonville, people. I mean, fantasy, real life, reality. I mean, he just completely dominated, and he made number 8.
There's a reason they have the number 1 pick. So yeah, I'm with you there. But yeah, no, Derrick Henry, he's just a beast. I mean, he's one of those guys where all throughout the year we just saw him just kind of posterizing defenders, making them look silly. So I mean, I'm excited for the rest of your list when you're talking about these guys at number 10, 9, and 8 here. So for me, my list. Bear with me as well. My list also does not. It just includes specific moments and plays. It also does have. It's more of a storyline list. So
right here.
for my number 8, it's gonna be for me. I feel like NFL fans, the NFL world, and the sports world in general has taken Alex Smith for granted. His comeback this year, I think, is better than any other comeback in history for him.
Wow.
Even just for the sheer fact that he had to go through 17 surgeries over what was a course of 2 years.
Okay.
Nearly had to amputate his leg off, and he puts in a whole year and a half's work to get back on the field for one, but then to make this absolutely disgusting roster of Washington comparable to take them to the playoffs. That was special for me just to see him, and it's not just about what he's done with Washington. I mean, both the years that he's actually played in Washington, this team is overachieved. So that's one thing. But then going back to his time in Kansas City as a game manager, that's air quotes there, because I mean he does play solid football. He has great numbers when you look back at it.
Absolutely.
So he just his career as a whole, I think we've taken him for granted and what he's been able to do, because we're always comparing him to Aaron Rodgers because of what happened during that 2005 draft and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you take Aaron Rodgers out of it, Alex Smith has had a fantastic career, and so I think we need to give him more recognition and more credit moving forward because he has been a fantastic player in this league. So that was my number 8. Just wanted to kind of throw in a few of those other storylines that are
an Alex Smith storyline.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey. That's valid. I'll give you that. I'm sitting here trying to think. Is there anybody? I mean, obviously, there's had to be someone that's come back from injuries that's better than Alex Smith. And that's not taking anything away from Alex Smith.
Yeah.
However, as I sat here, I couldn't come up with one name.
I mean,
I really don't think. I don't.
A lot of people would be talking about the J.J. Watt comeback from whatever many injuries that he's had, but at the end of the day, he didn't elevate his team past what their just core was, and he was just playing within that system. And Alex Smith to come in and elevate this, like I said, it's an atrocious roster on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, the defense has been kind of underrated throughout the season, but just offensively, the guys that are injured and not playing, there is no Terry McLaurin this year. Really, they're who is their running back? Gibson got. He's in jail right now, I think. So,
Is he?
I think so. I can't remember, but I mean, he's not playing. So
Oh, he's on
at
my
the end of the day,
fantasy
that's what I'm
team.
talking about. So,
Oh no, he's on my
oh,
fantasy
maybe
team.
not Gibson. Somebody, one of their running backs, he's not there. So at the end of the day, it's just for him to elevate that offense to be able to even just make the playoffs, even though it's in a horrible division, and it's not anything to write home about. But at the end of the day, to get them into the playoffs, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to play. But just the what he had to do to come back and get this team where they are is kind of phenomenal. So yeah,
It's amazing in that entire story. You left out they won a divisional championship and all of that. But yes,
it's the NFC least.
I would just
I think that
conclude.
actually kind of waters it down a little bit. But
I mean, to the one who won the division, I don't
yeah.
think so. So.
So
But with that being said, I completely agree with every point you made with Alex Smith. Not that Alex Smith was on my highlights or in
yeah,
my notes, but I basically I agree and I concur with every point you made. Alex Smith is truly one of those inspirational stories,
yeah,
and a great comeback story. For the ages, really. If you really was, as you just so eloquently did, to break down what this man went through in his time off in his
yeah,
rehab and getting back, and that he did he almost lost his leg,
yeah,
and a lot of people don't know that.
yeah. And the other crazy fact about that it is the exact same injury, down to the day of the Joe Theismann injury for the same team, and it just across the board. There's just so many insane things that happen with that. But we can move forward here. What do you got for number 7?
Number 7. All right, just rev this list up a little bit. Aaron freaking Rodgers.
Now, just before you get into Aaron Rodgers, everybody
Yes.
knows me. I have my biases against anybody in NFC North, as I have made it very clear that I am a diehard Bears fan, but I try to keep that from clouding any of my judgment.
Right.
So I do have Aaron Rodgers on this list, and I'll talk about that later, but I want to hear what you got to say about
All
him.
right. Well, this one was shouldn't. This one I'm gonna do. I'm gonna deal with kid gloves. I mean, this one comes all the way back to week 1, people. So
Against Minnesota?
try to remember. Yes,
Okay.
at Minnesota, where he had 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2
Yep.
interceptions, 17 passing first downs. Um, I mean, he basically just owned. From what I can remember in the game, he just basically it was a typical week 1 NFL game. Just it looked like a playoff game atmosphere. However, it's week 1. It's
Yeah.
kind of
Before
weird.
Minnesota figured out that they weren't anywhere near the talent that they thought they were going to be.
Exactly. I mean, Green Bay don't know who they are. They
Yeah.
on the road. It's a rival.
No fans. It's first game with no fans.
COVID.
Yep.
Where we're doing. Take it for people. That's why they're number 7. But with that being said, I would take nothing away from the performance of Aaron Rodgers. He came out in week 1, and it was a foreshadowing of things to come, obviously. But
Mhm.
I like to highlight some of the games that we typically will. Even myself, we'll typically and find ourselves forgetting about, like,
Yeah.
oh, he did do that back in week 1. So
For sure.
that's who I have at number 7, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So back to my list here with the storyline kind of aspect of it. Houston Texans. We got to talk about them because they are in complete disarray. This is my number 7 here. The Houston Texans. I mean, just going back to the preseason, you got Bill O'Brien as your head coach. You're coming off of a season where you made the playoffs. You looked like a very hot team, and then at the end of the day, you're up 24-0 against Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champions. You're going up against them, and you completely the wheels fall off in that game. They come all the way back. You never score again. You lose that game. Your season is abruptly ended after you felt like you were on top of the world. Then moving off of that, going into that off season, everything seemed pretty chill. They didn't really make too many waves at the beginning of the offseason. Nobody was really talking about Houston. We just thought they were going to, hey, let's go ahead and run it back. Let's see what we can do. And then a bombshell just before the preseason is supposed to start. You trade away for a second round pick. This is how, if we remember, Arizona ended up with DeAndre Hopkins. They gave up a second round pick in David Johnson to get back DeAndre Hopkins, one of the, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the league right now. Catches everything that comes to him. That's why the Hail Mary happened. So at the end of the day, you end up trading away your all-star talent, which I said at the time, you're gonna have to do something now, Bill O'Brien, because your job is on the line as a GM and as a head coach, because you just traded away one of the all-time talents, and clearly the ownership agreed because he's out after what I believe 4 weeks in the season.
If it was 4.
If it was 4. But quickly they were not impressed by that move and other moves that were made in the prior seasons. He's out as a head coach. So we thought that was the worst of it. But as the Houston Texans season ends, as they ended, I believe, either 4-12 or 5-11, whatever it was, it wasn't good. And J.J. Watt comes up to Deshaun Watson and actually at the end of the game apologizes for wasting a season of Deshaun Watson.
Oh, wow.
And now we're sitting at a time where we have, I believe, the new GM comes in and says we have no intentions of trading Deshaun Watson. We want to keep him. There's all these reports that Deshaun Watson wants to leave the Houston Texans organization after he was promised by ownership that he would be involved in the hiring process of the GM and the new head coach as they want to see what they can do with Deshaun Watson moving forward. But you completely negate that. You go hire a new GM without any consideration to Deshaun Watson. He voices his displeasure with that, but at the time still hasn't said that he wants to trade.
Right.
Now we move forward just a few weeks, and we're talking about Deshaun Watson says, hey, I want Eric Bieniemy. That's the guy that I want. And also, if you can't get Eric Bieniemy, you guys aren't on board with Eric Bieniemy, I want Robert Saleh. Okay. Now, Robert Saleh gets hired by the New York Jets and comes out and says, hey, I never even had a chance to talk to the Houston Texans organization. They never reached out to me once. And now you move forward again where you already disrespected the man once with the hiring of the GM without after you told him that you were going to have him in the process, which you never should do. I agree. You don't have to, as an organization, involve your star player in that hiring process if you don't want to. But if you tell the man you're going to do it, then do it. Like that's where I'm coming in that regard. But that aside, now you're going ahead and then you finally interview Eric Bieniemy after weeks and weeks where he has the consideration of a lot of other teams, which Eric Bieniemy's story is something that we can talk about another day, but
absolutely
we can move on from that. I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole right now. I could go on and on.
Can I just quick sidebar about Bieniemy and the Texans?
Yeah,
they call him in. I wasn't it not Super Week when this went down? Like
this was on
going into Super Week when
this was before the playoff game with the Bills, because at this time actually what had happened was I think this is at the beginning of the playoffs, because that they had the first interview with him, because once we're heading into the Buffalo Bills game with Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, we're actually getting reports from Houston saying that it's down to Eric Bieniemy and Leslie Frazier are the two candidates that they have, and Leslie Frazier is, I think, D coordinator over there with Buffalo right now.
Yep.
So they're going into this game where everybody here is thinking whoever wins this game basically wins the job. That's kind of how it's kind of setting up to be. Right. Or also the possibility whoever loses here has another chance of interviewing and getting their foot higher into the door with Houston.
Right.
But then they go completely left field, and they hire, I don't even know the man's name, and I apologize, but a Baltimore Ravens, like 20-year assistant coach, never been a coordinator once in his coaching career, and definitely not somebody who is going to wow Deshaun Watson to have as his new head coach. And it's not to say anything bad about him specifically. I don't mean to kind of rag on this man specifically, because I know nothing about him. Like I said, I don't even know the man's name. But at the end of the day, it's just everything about the Deshaun Watson situation in Houston has been grossly mismanaged by the Texans organization. I used to think Jacksonville and the Cleveland Browns used to be the worst run franchises, but with everything that's just happened with Houston, I think that they could potentially take that title from both of those teams at this point. So,
Wow,
uh,
that is a bold statement. It's going to take quite a bit for them to do that, but
I mean, you have this generational talent, a guy that I know how great he is. I watched him all throughout his time in Clemson, and I was desperately praying that the Chicago Bears would take him in that draft. So I've watched his entire career. I've watched all the way when he started in Clemson, and even before that, I've watched some of his high school film, and just for him to be such a talent, to be a guy that if you put him into any sort of an offense, he elevates that offense no matter what pieces are around him.
mhm.
And you just completely disrespect him the way that you have it, and now you're talking about how you're going to hold him hostage until he complies and is ready to play for your team. I just don't see the process that you have behind that thought. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You've completely disrespected him, and now you're in this really crappy situation with him.
Well, taking with the position that they're in right now, and I've heard others talk, and they stated, how the Texans feel that they're in the driver's seat, they're in control, they don't really have to do anything right now, they could just wait.
They're not in control at all. He doesn't. He has a no trade clause.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll just set you up for what I wanted to say. Go ahead.
The fact that he has a no trade clause, you've lost all leverage.
Thank you.
He can tell you basically, you need to trade me today. I am never playing for you. Another snap for you ever again.
Exactly.
You need to trade me now because. And this is the biggest thing is the fact that I think March 17th, the start of the new league year, whatever the date that is in March.
I think that's what do we call it?
What's up?
The holiday? It's not a holiday, but it's a holiday. St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So the start of the new league year, sometime in March is, it'll kick things off, and that's when you can trade him. And in that time, and heading up until the draft, is the only time that you can trade him. In all honesty, because at that point, once you hit the draft, none of these teams care about Deshaun Watson anymore, and they're all going to be making trades with other quarterbacks that are on the market, and we're going to probably have a show coming up talking about the QB carousel that's going to be happening here. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
But outside of that, there's going to be so much shuffling that happens. You've lost all leverage. You have to trade him now. You have to start talking to teams right now because they already are talking to everybody right now and making deals and starting to finalize that very important position.
And
so,
and the league sees, I mean, everybody knows the NFL is a copycat league.
Yeah.
Most of these professional sports teams across the four major sports, they're copycat leagues.
Yeah.
With that being said, you there's no time. The Texans have no time, no leverage, no advantage. They have nothing. They need to start, seriously reacting. And reacting to this situation for what
it'd
it
be
is.
different if he was Matthew Stafford and 32 years old and yes, I want to move on. We're mutually agreeing to move on, and that
Right.
trade happened, and they got back. I think great compensation for Matthew Stafford. You get a new young quarterback. You get a couple first round picks in the future. You get a third round pick this year. That's going to be very valuable this year. There's deep talent in this draft. So at the end of the day, we know Deshaun Watson is going to demand more, and that's fine. But once we hit the draft,
Right.
that price is only going to continue to come down, 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 down the closer we get to the season, because nobody's going to be giving anything up to try to get a disgruntled QB that we don't know if he wants to be here or not. We can put in a trade offer. He can decline it because he doesn't want to be there. So he's going to put out a list of teams that he wants to go to, and I'm pretty sure he's already told quite a few. Well, I'll go to the Bears. I'll go to the Jets. I'll go to the Dolphins. Like, hey, these are better situations than what I've got right here in Houston right now. I'm fine going to these guys. I'd love to go to the Patriots. All like whatever list that he has right now, I guarantee he's told the new GM where he would like to go, and you need to talk to these teams now. But he just keeps coming out, and a lot of other analysts have said, hey, this is probably them just trying to drive up the price a bit more, saying that we're going to keep him. We don't care if he doesn't want to be here. We're going to keep him, so you're going to have to shock us with a huge deal that we can't refuse to get him. and I get that. But at the end of the day, if you really do feel like you're going to hold on and he's going to play the rest of that contract out with you, you're sadly mistaken because it's not going to. He has all the leverage here. He can tell you exactly what he wants, and all he has to do is get on his phone, open up the Twitter app, start typing away, which he already has been doing, and that's going to create a huge buzz across the entire league. And it's all we're talking about now. The Super Bowl's over. It's all we're going to talk about until we have a deal done. So it's a very compromising position for Houston. And I know I've been rambling on about this for probably like 10, 15 minutes, but I'm very passionate about Deshaun Watson. So at the end of the day, I think the Houston Texans organization has grossly failed over the last 2 years with star players.
Well, but no, I think you're spot on. I mean, what is this segment we're on? Top 10, right?
Yeah.
Top 10 over the. This is a top 10 story, if not any story, and it's a train wreck. And it's been a train wreck from week one, and it's a train wreck now. After, days after the Super Bowl, and if the Houston Texans don't feel or believe that they are not in an actual rebuild, really, this team, this expansion franchise can go back into obscurity and go away because they're not positioning themselves to move forward. And if that number one bullet point on the list isn't trade Deshaun Watson for massive assets, you all are not serious about your future because this man is not serious about his future in Houston anymore, and you all need to come to terms with this. And the writing has been on the wall for the last year.
The other thing about it is, you wouldn't want a disgruntled QB on your roster. I mean, at the end of the day, that is going to negatively affect your team no matter what. He is the leader in that locker room. He has all the voice in that locker room. All the players, like I said, J.J. Watt at the end of the year came up to him. J.J. Watt, a perennial defensive player of the year candidate, a guy who's been to numerous Pro Bowls, an all-pro player. He comes up to Deshaun Watson, a 26, 27-year-old man, and apologizes for wasting a year of his talent. Like, that is just unimaginable to me, how you could just completely not see what is going on with your star QB, the man that you have invested over $100 million into him. And so it's just an insane story. It's an insane situation, and I can't wrap my brain fully around what the Houston Texans organization plan is with him. If you're trying to save face and trying to drive up the price for him, if you really feel like you're going to be able to force him to come back to training camp or mini camp, whatever it is that the mandatory workouts are when they'll start up this offseason, and hopefully he falls in love with this new head coach and moves forward and says, forget everything that happened over the last 2 years. Let's go play football. I just don't see it. I think Deshaun Watson's too smart. He knows what leverage he has. This is slowly but surely turning into more of an NBA player. Players have a lot more power kind of league now in the NFL. So I'm going to stop rambling about it because I can talk about this for another 3 hours, but we can.
Exactly. I mean, and I'll just conclude that moment. I just want to add on to conclude. But if the Houston haven't done anything else, they have to take the model of the Detroit Lions and how they handled the whole Barry Sanders thing back in the 90s. I mean, granted, there wasn't social media then, but that story would have been just as big, if not bigger, than what we're dealing with now with Deshaun Watson. It's at that same magnitude.
Yeah.
What is to be taken from that? Barry Sanders never played another game in football. Barry Sanders has remained happy and has remained very content with his career, and has arguably went down as still the number two or the number three running back of all time. With that being said, Barry Sanders has been fine. The issue has been the Detroit Lions, the franchise.
Yeah.
Houston Texans, are you not following this mode? They only had a handful of playoff appearances since Barry Sanders has left the team in the mid '90s. And I
don't believe they won a single playoff game.
No, they have won none of them, by the way. And since I would just start from 1994, I'll just start from 94. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 playoff appearances from 1994 to 2016.
Jesus.
just 7. All losses, 0 for 7, and from 2016 now to 2021, nothing. They have not even sniffed the playoffs. And this is what happens when they hold out, don't want to move, don't want to budge, stay. They harp on one. They want to stand their ground. They don't want to see this man or this guy
Yeah,
go and play for someone else. And Detroit has not been the best for it. With that being said, and let's fast forward it all the way to today. I don't see the Houston Texans breaking that mode as well. So with that, again, Deshaun Watson on the trade block should be at the top, your number one priority right now.
for sure. Yeah. So that I'm not gonna get more into it because I'll just get more passionate. But
Yes.
let's move on.
Let's move on.
Number 6 here. Your number 6. You can kick that off.
My number 6 is Tyler Lockett, and I know I'm
Okay.
doing top performances from players, and I think this is a nice balance that
Yeah.
we got going on here. But my number 6 top
Tyler
play
Lockett.
of the year has come from top performance has come from Tyler Lockett. Week 7, um, I have to say, now that you brought up fantasy, if this was a fantasy show, all I'm gonna say, was as good as it got for Tyler Lockett. And if anybody had any foresight or a crystal ball, or they can go back and they just knew this right after this game, trade him for the farm, because Tyler Lockett didn't show up ever again in the season after this performance in week 7. I mean, he played.
Yeah.
He was out there. He suited up. He practiced. He showed up for games. He received paychecks. He went home. He came back. He was there. However, I'll just focus on the highlight of his of his season, and really this is where his season began and ended. So, with that being said, in week 7 at Arizona, he was targeted. He was targeted 20 times. He had 15 catches for 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had 11 catches that was all for first downs. So I mean, the man was everywhere. He just completely. I don't even know what Arizona was thinking about. I mean, their defensive. I don't know who their defensive coordinator is by name. However, I'm surely this man either got fined or got his job threatened after this one, because
Oh
I
man.
mean he literally got torched. Now remember, there's a DK Metcalf over here,
Yeah.
and I'm not even gonna bring up his stat line. His
Oh,
numbers
I've
were
got it up right here.
oh,
He's got 2 receptions for 23 yards and 0 touchdowns. I don't have his first downs and all that stuff. He averaged at 11 and a half yards per reception. But I think the thing that everybody remembers about this game is that Buda Baker interception at the goal line, which another Russell Wilson goal line interception. Well, we won't get into that. That's a historical thing there for the young
boy.
ones. But he runs down Buda Baker. He thinks he
Should
has
be
a
the
clear
greatest of all
lane to
time.
get all the way to. Oh man, Buda Baker thinks he has a clear lane to get a touchdown to end this game, kind of continue to go up on Seattle, and then out of nowhere you're just seeing DK Metcalf, this huge specimen of a man, just absolutely trucking him down, and then gets him down at like the 5 yard line. That is the play, and that's one of the moments that I know the internet has definitely latched onto. But I think yes, you've kind of pointed out this game was about Tyler Lockett.
Right.
So he just had an insane game, completely torched Arizona's defense, and they were not able to stop him whatsoever. I don't know what is wrong with the DBs there. I don't know what's wrong with the defensive coordinator, what the plan was to allow Tyler Lockett to do Tyler Lockett things where he's able to get 200 yards and 3 touchdowns to completely make this game one where it shouldn't have been this close.
No, it shouldn't. And just by you even bringing up the issue, the situation with DK Metcalf, I mean, for me, I mean this brings up a good Pop Warner, analogy. I mean, because in Pop Warner, you got your ringers on your
Yeah.
team, you got your best players, and whoever Johnny is, and Johnny's the running back or the wide receiver, and no one can stop Johnny. Johnny gets 1,000 catches, and
Yeah.
gets 100,000 touchdowns, and no one ever stops him, and he's great, and everybody's cheering like, come on, he's playing him, he's playing way above his pay grade
Yeah.
with talent, and we get it. It's Pop Warner.
Yeah.
Okay. With that being said, we seen that. That's Tyler Lockett, Pop Warner. He had a Pop Warner game. I mean, just exploded. And then you still get it with the DK Metcalf, the hustle play.
Yeah.
You don't see this in the pros ever. That's what
No.
made this. That play probably eclipsed with even Lockett did. I should have probably put DK Metcalf for what he just his one play, just
Yeah.
ran this man down. But I, I don't want to give. I mean, the play was that significant, but
Yeah.
and it was that rare. You just do not see that in football for an offensive player to put that kind of hustle and put that kind of effort into a play, especially specifically off a turnover.
Yeah.
Um, that's what this is getting to the essence of what football is supposed to be. That game just capsulated all of that.
This
And
was one of the best games of the year. And remember, I definitely had Seattle in this game because if anybody remembers going back to that the preseason, I had Seattle as one of my sleeper teams this year. Nobody's talking about them. Everybody's excited about the Rams offense coming back. Let's see what Sean McVay can do, bouncing back from that disappointing 2019 campaign. Let's go ahead and talk about the young Kyler Murray and Arizona's offense and see what they can do. And Seattle, slowly but surely, they were putting together something. And you got your running backs, you got Carlos Hyde, you got Chris Carson. They also had one more, I forget his name, but that doesn't really matter. They're
Dallas.
Yeah, they fell apart at some point. And Russell Wilson, this was the whole let Russ cook campaign where he came out and he played phenomenal for the first half of the season, but then the wheels fell off, and I don't know what happened to Seattle in the second half of the year. I honestly not sure why the philosophy had changed, and it definitely did hurt with all of the injuries that they did have in the running back position. But man, just looking back at DK Metcalf season, Tyler Lockett season, Russell Wilson season, and Seattle as a whole as a team, they had a fantastic year, and it was disappointing for them to lose against the Rams and whatnot. But this is one of those teams where you're not going to see a team that has those type of hustle plays anywhere else. I think Pete Carroll has done a fantastic job with this team, with the young guys that are on this team to tell them, hey, we need heart. We need hustle. We need every single play. You need to be out there like it's going to be your last. You got to give it your all. And that it was all capsulated by that one DK Metcalf play there. And so I have a lot of admiration for the Seattle team just because of the way that they played this year. It was football that I like to see. So,
Yes,
yeah.
I agreed with that. On top of that, I just want to add, you hear a lot about how, you know, um, New England is usually the team that I'm sorry, that New England usually gets that type of
Yeah.
that type of kind of that status,
Yeah.
But no, Seattle has been showing, is also one of these teams who have shown themselves. Pete Carroll as a coach, Russell Wilson as the quarterback,
Yep.
and a floor general, but they're just like how New England has been given this label that I'm about to share, but they have also shown themselves to be, been able to do more with less, and look at the talent. I mean, yeah, Russell Wilson, yes, there's, like you just listen like Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, just the household names, sorta,
If you play fantasy football,
fantasy. You're from Seattle,
Yeah. Exactly.
that everyone in every nook and cranny of the country don't know these players,
Yeah.
And the running backs. I mean, who's Chris Carson? I
Yeah.
mean, we know who Chris Carson, but you know what I mean. To the
Yeah.
average person at the water cooler,
They're
Chris
not going to
Carson,
understand who you're talking about,
they don't know.
why he's important, anything like
Right.
that. So
Exactly. And so here we are. Seattle have shown themselves. If you looked at anyone follows Russell Wilson's career, or if you've been following Pete Carroll in Seattle,
Yeah.
he is. I mean, arguably have done just as much with less than what what Belichick has been able to do in New England. However, we already know that Belichick has had more success with his personnel as opposed to what Seattle has and Pete Carroll has been able to do in Seattle.
Yeah.
But I digress. It was just a parallel and an analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, and just trying to show some
similarities between the two.
Yes.
It's one of those things where I think a lot of we see the success with the Patriots. I see what you're saying there. It's just like, yes, they've got the rings for it and everything like that, but they're not the only teams that do things along these lines. And you have to really go back and look to appreciate what Pete Carroll has done with the Seattle team. Look at Sean McDermott and what he's done with the Buffalo Bills. Nobody's really going to talk about it because, yes, they lost in the AFC Championship game pretty handedly against Kansas City. But that's Andy Reid and the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Tyrann Mathieu. It's just an abundance of talent is on that Kansas City team.
It's a
You
nightmare in cleats.
yeah. So at the end of the day, you have to give credit where credit is due with teams like Seattle, teams like Buffalo, these teams that not just overachieved, but did have fantastic moments, and have actually these coaches have gotten these teams to play above their talent level. So, I mean, we can talk about that and get into the philosophy of the NFL and all that if we wanted to at a later point. But my number six here, I was an absolute massive fan of Super Wildcard Weekend. Getting two extra games this year, I loved it. The playoffs is what we all live for when it comes to the NFL. It's do or die. Any given Sunday, anybody can win. Fortunately, my Bears couldn't. But at the end of the day, it was fantastic to have more football. That's what we want as fans, is to watch more football. We feel like the season is too short in the first place. We only got 17 weeks. We only get 16 games of the regular season. Nobody cares about the preseason NFL games. We watch the Hall of Fame game because it's the first football that we've gotten in 3-4 months, and then we don't watch any of the preseason. So we get the 16 regular season games, and then you get playoffs, and when we get two extra playoff games where you got guys giving it everything that they have, it's fantastic to see. So I love Super Wild Card Weekend. I think it's a smashing success. I think that this needs to be opened up even more. Maybe take it to 8 teams. Get rid of these bye weeks. Just have the home field advantage, if you will. So I love Super Wild Card Weekend. I think it's been something that the NFL kind of needed an extra spark, especially in this COVID season where you don't really have all these fans. So I loved it. But what were your thoughts on the extra playoff games that we got?
I was gonna play devil's advocate, but I can't. I'm a firm believer. It should be almost set up like basketball and hockey. I think
Yeah,
it should be 8 teams per
exactly.
conference. I mean, that's a nice round number. That's not half the league.
Yep.
As much as there's been some chatter and some people snubbing their nose to they didn't like the idea of it. There's too many teams in. These teams don't deserve to be in there. Well, let's take the working model here. We had the Saints and the Bears in the 2-7 match in the NFC versus we had the Bills and the Colts. These are very good playoff matchups when you really look at them. And I mean, just to be the 2-7, which used to be our old 3-6 matchups,
Yep.
or the games that we considered not so not so exciting, not so demanding. Who cares, kind of thing. But no, I think it is just this new model has expanded the talent pool, and we getting two extra teams deserving
Yeah.
that should be in there because in certain circles, some people used to question or argue the buys. That was an issue,
Mm-hmm.
So I think this kind of helps offset that. Plus, gives us two extra teams. It was the first year they did it. They rolled it out during COVID. I thought it was a success. As you
Yeah.
said, yeah, the Bears. Okay, then probably couldn't beat the Saints. I mean, all
But I mean,
right.
if you even go back to that game with the Bears Saints playoff game, honestly, the Bears showed up in that game. Offensively, absolutely not. They weren't able to do anything on the offensive side of the ball. But that's an underrated New Orleans defense. And at the end of the day, we're going in with Mitch Trubisky, a guy that all
Mm-hmm.
Bears fans agree, all NFL fans agree, not your franchise QB. He's not going to be able to do it moving forward. So for him to go up against an underrated defense, and them to, but the Bears defense to come out and actually slow down Drew Brees and that Saints offense, and they really didn't have that fantastic of a game. That was the first kind of like crack in the armor that I saw for New Orleans, is the fact that, hey, the Bears defense, who's been really struggling with their defensive backs for sure, coming into that game to slow down Drew Brees in that offense a bit. I mean, they didn't really take off until late the fourth quarter. They scored a couple of touchdowns at the end in garbage time, and they made it too far out of reach. Mitch Trubisky was not going to be able to do a week one a Detroit Lions comeback against
Right.
that team where you're going to be able to throw the ball across the yard, get Anthony Miller a touchdown for 40 yards or whatnot. No, it wasn't going to happen. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, granted. Yeah. If the Bears had shown, I mean, if it had a somewhat of a continuity this year with their quarterback play and had a
Yeah.
much better offensive flow, Granted, the game could have went a lot differently. With that being said, the season would have went a lot differently. The Bears may have been a higher seed at this
Yeah.
point. So it's wouldas, couldas, and shouldas.
At
But
the end of the day, I loved the wild card weekend. That was the point, and it is just one of those where I think that this definitely opens up the opportunity to expand it more. Like you said, go to 8 teams, have no more buys. Just hey, this is playoff football. You got to play your best for 4 weeks to get a Super Bowl. Everybody's got to play 4 games if you want to get that Super Bowl title.
exactly, and you flip it over to the opposite side. That Buffalo Colts game was about as exciting as it came
Oh God,
going down the
that was
stretch.
amazing.
And the Colts almost walked out of there with that, which everyone wanted to praise the Buffalo. Everybody was ready to crown Josh Allen as the new hot thing coming
I
next
didn't do
year.
that, but I did praise Buffalo. They were fantastic
Which
in
is
that game.
fair to a degree, and that's fine. You know, some people gonna go off the deep end and be like, "Well, the Buffalo will be in a Super Bowl next year, and he'll
You
have
always
it."
got your extremists there.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's coming. That's coming down the pipeline. But till that day, yeah. But the Colts, I mean, bottom line, if you took these pair of wild card games, just to look these 7 seed games,
Yeah.
some of the most exciting football, even with deficient offenses and upstart teams like Colts with
Yeah.
a 1 year wonder hit Philip Rivers
Yeah.
to lead the team, in the AFC. It just
It was fun to watch, and you got good games. You got exciting football, and I think it's only gonna go from there. I mean, we're gonna hopefully have fans next year to see these games, and that's gonna create a whole different atmosphere. And at the end of the day, we're gonna have teams that had a off season where they could work out and get healthy and do everything that they can to create some continuity so that we can have great football throughout the entire season, and it culminates in Super Wild Card Weekend where we get to see these very tough teams go at it and fight for a chance to continue to make it down to the playoffs and continue to play great football moving forward. So I think that was definitely a win for the NFL. They did fantastic with that, even without having as many fans as we wanted to in these stadiums to create these absolutely insane atmospheres. It was a smashing success. Like I've said, it was something that I definitely am going to enjoy watching moving forward.
exactly.